The day was ending, just like any other Tuesday. Mums and dads were heading home from work, kids were cycling back from their mates' houses, their school bags bouncing on their backs. The sun was beginning to dip, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Everyone was thinking about dinner, maybe fish and chips tonight, or perhaps a nice shepherd's pie. They walked along the pavement, past the familiar shops and houses, not a care in the world. But something was wrong, terribly wrong. They just didn't know it yet. The air felt a little bit off. Young Tom was kicking a pebble along the path near the river steep. It was his favorite route home. He usually watched the ducks or tried to skim stones across the water, but today something caught his eye, the river. It looked funny, a peculiar dull green color, not the usual murky brown he was accustomed to seeing. He paused, his football boots scuffing the dirt. There was a smell too, faint, but definitely there, like gone-off eggs mixed with something metallic. He wrinkled his nose. What was that? A few more people began to notice. Mrs. Higgins, walking her yappy terrier, stopped abruptly. "Goodness me, Buster," she muttered, tugging on the lead. "What on earth is that peculiar aroma?" Buster just whined, pulling away from the riverbank. More passers-by slowed their pace. They gathered in small, hesitant groups, pointing and whispering. A low hiss seemed to emanate from the water's surface. It was soft at first, almost lost in the evening breeze. But it was growing. The strange, eggy smell was getting stronger now, making some cover their noses with their hands. This wasn't normal, not normal at all. Then the water began to move, not in the usual gentle flow towards the sea. Small bubbles started appearing. First one or two, then dozens, then hundreds. They popped on the surface, releasing little puffs of... what was that? Steam? It wasn't cold enough for steam. A weird, greenish-yellow vapor rose slowly from the river. It danced in the air like ghostly fingers. Unease rippled through the small crowd. This was more than just peculiar. This was scary, very scary indeed. Something awful was about to happen. Suddenly, the entire surface of the river steep churned. The dull green transformed into a disgusting, sludgy brown, then to an oily, bubbling black. It was boiling, like a giant kettle left on the hob for far too long. Great gloopy bubbles burst with loud, sucking pops. The hissing sound intensified, becoming a sinister sizzle that filled the air. The strange, greenish-yellow steam billowed upwards in thick clouds, now tinged with a nasty, dark gray. It was a witch's brew, a monstrous soup cooking right before their eyes. Nobody moved. They were frozen by fear. The steam wasn't just steam. Oh no, it was something far worse. As it drifted over the riverbank, it stung their eyes. It made them cough, harsh, rasping coughs. Their throats burned as if they'd swallowed fire. The smell was overpowering now. Rotten eggs, yes, but also burning plastic, and something else, something sharp and chemical that clawed at their nostrils. Acid. It had to be acid. The air itself felt poisonous, thick and unbreathable. People started to back away, their faces contorted in disgust and terror. What was happening to their river? Then, the cars parked along River Road began to react. A bright red sports car, someone's pride and joy, started to sizzle. Its shiny paint bubbled up like burnt skin. Then it peeled away in long, curling strips, revealing dull metal beneath. The metal itself began to groan and hiss. Another car, a family saloon, saw its windscreen crack and then melt, dripping like hot treacle. The chrome bumpers turned black and pitted. This wasn't just steam. This was a monster dissolving everything in its path. The tires on the cars were the next to go. They sagged, then melted into sticky black puddles on the tarmac. Puddles that smoked. The road itself, where the densest clouds of acidic steam touched it, began to smoke too. Little wisps curled up from the asphalt. Panic erupted. Pure, unadulterated panic. Screams tore through the air. "It's acid!" someone shrieked. "The river's full of acid! They had to get away now, before it was too late. But was it already too late?" People turned and fled. They scrambled. They pushed. They fell. It was chaos. Their only thought was escape. Get away from the river. Get away from the burning, melting horror. The acid steam, thick and choking, billowed after them. It swirled around their ankles, then their knees. It was like a hungry beast, chasing its prey. Some tripped on the uneven pavement, crying out as the acrid mist enveloped them. Their clothes began to smolder where the vapor touched them. The happy evening had turned into a nightmare. A real-life, waking nightmare. The acid wasn't just in the air. The river itself, that boiling black torrent of poison, began to rise. It sloshed over its banks, a disgusting, hissing tide. It crept up the grassy verges and the green grass turned instantly black, shriveling as if touched by a giant, invisible flame. Small bushes dissolved into smoking mush. The very ground seemed to be dissolving under their feet. There was no escape from the ground, so they looked up, praying for a sign, praying for help. But the sky offered no comfort, only more terror, because the sky was changing too. The beautiful sunset colors were gone, erased. A deep, unnatural darkness was spreading from the east. It wasn't the darkness of nightfall. It wasn't the bruised purple of a thunderstorm. This was a flat, dead blackness, like a giant ink stain spilling across the heavens, blotting out the light, swallowing the hope. It moved with a terrifying speed, a silent, creeping dread that chilled everyone to the bone. What new horror was this? Could things possibly get any worse? Oh, yes, they could. And then they saw it, emerging from the advancing gloom. A shape, a monstrous, unbelievable shape. It was colossal, hanging silently in the darkened sky. It was black, pitch black, and it was shaped like a spade. A giant playing card spade suspended high above their heads. It didn't move. It just hung there, a terrifying silhouette against the dying light. A low, guttural roar began to echo. Not from the river, not from the ground. It was coming from the sky, from the spade, or from whatever was behind it. The roar from the sky grew louder, much louder. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a physical force. It vibrated through the ground, up their legs, into their chests. It rattled their teeth. It felt like the world itself was groaning in agony. The giant black spade of smoke, or whatever it was, drifted slowly, ominously, across the darkened sky. Then it stopped. It stopped right above them, directly overhead, looming, watching, waiting. The silence that followed the stop was almost worse than the roar. But it didn't last long. Below, the acid continued its relentless advance. It surged through the streets, a hissing, bubbling tide of pure destruction. It lapped at the steps of houses, dissolving wood and brick. It swirled around lampposts, which then buckled and crashed to the ground with sickening thuds. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The acid was everywhere. And the thing in the sky, it was still there, watching. The air was thick with the stench of chemicals and fear. Every breath was a torment, every heartbeat a drum of pure terror. People couldn't run anymore. Their legs wouldn't obey. Their lungs burned. Their eyes streamed. One by one, they stumbled. They fell. They dropped to their knees on the cracking pavements, on the dissolving roads. They looked up at the terrifying black spade that blotted out what little remained of the sky. They looked at the advancing, fuming acid that promised a horrific end. Trapped. They were utterly, hopelessly trapped between two impossible horrors. There was no escape. This was it. The end. Tears streamed down their faces, mixing with the acrid condensation from the air. Soot-stained, terrified faces turned upwards. They cried out, not in anger, not in defiance. They cried out for mercy. "Please," a woman sobbed, her voice hoarse. "Have mercy." A man nearby, his face a mask of despair, whispered prayers he hadn't thought of in years. All around, the sound of weeping, of desperate pleas, rose into the poisoned air. But the sky only answered with an even louder, more terrifying roar. And the acid kept coming closer and closer.